Imagine two companies. Both start at the same time. Both have smart people. Both work hard. One slowly becomes exceptional. The other stays average. Not bad, not failing, just good. And then time passes. 10 years, 20 years. One becomes a name people study. The other fades into the background. This gap is the mystery at the heart of Good to Great. Jim Collins did not write this book to celebrate success stories. He wrote it to answer a stubborn question. Why do some organizations make the leap from good to truly great, while most never do? Not for a year, not during a lucky season, but consistently, sustainably, over decades. This book matters because we live in a world obsessed with quick wins, viral growth, overnight success, shortcut thinking. Good to Great argues the opposite. Greatness is quiet. It is slow. It is built through discipline, clarity, and patience. Jim Collins and his research team spent years studying companies that achieved extraordinary results. Not startups, not flashy turnarounds, established companies that were merely average for a long time. Then something changed. These companies did not rely on a genius CEO swooping in with bold visions. They did not chase trends. They did not gamble on miracles. They focused on fundamentals, again and again and again. That is why this book still matters today. Whether you run a business, lead a team, build a YouTube channel, or try to improve your own life, the same forces apply. Momentum matters, clarity matters, discipline matters, and comfort is dangerous. One of the most unsettling ideas in this book is simple. Good is the enemy of great. Not failure, not chaos, not incompetence. Comfort. When things work well enough, urgency disappears. When results are acceptable, ambition softens. When progress feels stable, growth slows. Most people do not fail, they settle. Good to Great is a study of those who refused to settle. As we move through this journey, you will see a few themes appear again and again. First, great leadership is not loud. The best leaders combine deep humility with fierce resolve. They care more about the mission than their ego. Second, people come before strategy. The right people can adapt to almost any challenge. The wrong people can ruin the best plan. Third, truth is a competitive advantage. Great organizations face brutal facts without losing faith. They do not hide from reality, they use it. Fourth, focus beats intelligence. Greatness comes from understanding one thing deeply, then aligning everything around it. And finally, greatness is built, not announced. It arrives through steady pressure, not dramatic breakthroughs.
This book is not motivational in the traditional sense. It will not hype you up. It will calm you down. It replaces urgency with patience, noise with clarity, motion with direction. As you listen, do not think only about companies. Think about yourself. Where are you comfortable? Where are you busy but unfocused? Where are you pushing hard but pushing randomly? Greatness is not reserved for CEOs or corporations. It is a pattern of behavior, a way of thinking, a way of choosing, a way of showing up, especially when nobody is watching. This is not a story about winning fast. It is a story about building something that lasts. Chapter 1. Good is the enemy of great. Here is the uncomfortable question that opens this chapter. If greatness is possible, why do so few ever reach it? Jim Collins starts with a simple observation. Most companies do not fail. They survive. They perform reasonably well. They stay profitable. And that is exactly the problem. Good performance creates comfort. Comfort reduces urgency. Urgency fades. Ambition shrinks. Good becomes a ceiling. Collins and his team studied thousands of companies. They searched for a very specific pattern, companies that were average for at least 15 years, then made a clear, sustained leap to exceptional results, at least 3 times better than the market, for at least 15 more years. This was not a lucky spike. This was not a temporary boom. This was greatness that lasted. They found only 11 companies that met this standard. That number alone should make you pause. Greatness is rare, and the reason is not lack of intelligence. It is not lack of resources. It is not bad luck. It is satisfaction. Most organizations stop pushing when things feel good enough. Revenue grows slowly but steadily, customers stay loyal, problems feel manageable. So people relax. They stop asking hard questions. They stop challenging assumptions. They stop feeling the tension that drives improvement. Good becomes the goal instead of the starting point. Think about how this shows up in real life. A student who gets decent grades stops studying deeply. A creator who gets moderate views stops experimenting. A professional with a stable job stops sharpening skills. Nothing is wrong, but nothing is exceptional either. Collins calls this the silent killer of greatness. Not crisis, not failure, comfort. What makes this idea powerful is how counterintuitive it feels. We assume failure motivates change, but success often blocks it. When results are bad, people feel pressure. They search for solutions. They take risks. When results are good, people protect what they have. They avoid disruption. They defend the status quo. Good performance numbs curiosity. One of the most important insights in this chapter is how Collins structured his research. He did not compare great companies to bad ones. That would be easy. He compared great companies to good companies in the same industry, same market conditions, same opportunities. One became great, the other stayed good. The difference was not environment, the difference was mindset. The good companies often aimed to preserve success. The great companies aimed to earn it again every day. This distinction matters. Good companies ask, how do we maintain performance? Great companies ask, how do we become better than we are today? Maintenance thinking versus growth thinking. Another key idea in this chapter is timing. Great companies did not chase greatness immediately. They spent years being ordinary. This matters because it removes the myth of overnight success. Greatness did not arrive through a dramatic transformation. It arrived after long periods of disciplined effort that looked boring from the outside. Most people quit during this phase. Why? Because results feel slow, progress feels invisible, recognition feels distant. Good companies settle during this phase. Great companies persist. Collins also highlights something subtle but important. The leap from good to great did not begin with a bold vision. It began with a deep dissatisfaction with the status quo. Not frustration, not anger, a quiet refusal to accept mediocrity. Leaders in great companies did not say, "We are doing fine." They said, "We can do better." That sentence changes everything. It changes hiring. It changes decision-making. It changes standards. Good companies often tolerate small inefficiencies. Great companies treat small inefficiencies as signals. A late meeting, a sloppy process, a vague goal. These are not ignored. They are examined because small problems compound. This chapter also challenges the idea that ambition must look aggressive. Great companies were not reckless. They were deliberate. They did not chase growth for ego. They chased excellence through discipline. Good companies often grow for appearance, market share, visibility, short-term wins. Great companies grow as a result of getting better. This distinction matters deeply. If you chase growth without improvement, fragility increases. If you chase improvement, growth follows naturally. There is also a psychological layer here. Good feels safe. Great feels uncertain. To pursue greatness, you must accept discomfort. You must accept delayed rewards. You must accept periods where effort exceeds results. Most people avoid this, not because they are lazy, but because they are human. Comfort feels rational. Pushing feels risky. Great companies normalize discomfort. They treat it as the price of progress. Collins does not romanticize struggle. He simply shows its necessity. You cannot coast and climb at the same time. This chapter ends with a warning. If you want greatness, you must be willing to give up good. That sounds simple. It is not. It means raising standards when things already work. It means questioning success instead of celebrating it. It means choosing long-term excellence over short-term ease. This applies far beyond business. If your routines work but do not challenge you, they are holding you back.
If your goals feel achievable without growth, they are too small. If your progress feels comfortable, you are probably standing still. Key takeaway: good is not a failure state, it is a seductive one. In the next chapter, we meet the leaders who made the leap possible. Not charismatic heroes, not loud visionaries, but quiet builders with an unusual combination of humility and will. Chapter 2: Level 5 Leadership. Here is a question worth sitting with. What kind of leader actually creates greatness that lasts? Most people imagine a bold figure at the top, charismatic, visionary, larger than life. Jim Collins found the opposite. When his team looked at the companies that made the leap from good to great, they expected to see celebrity CEOs. What they found instead was surprising. Quiet leaders, reserved personalities, people who avoided the spotlight. Yet these leaders produced extraordinary results. Collins calls them level 5 leaders. To understand this idea, he first lays out a hierarchy of leadership. At the base are capable individuals, people with skills and knowledge. Next come contributing team members. They work well with others. Then competent managers. They organize people and resources. Then effective leaders. They inspire and drive performance. At the top is level 5. This level combines two traits that rarely coexist: deep personal humility and intense professional will. This combination is the secret.
Level 5 leaders are ambitious, but their ambition is not about themselves. It is about the company, the mission, the long-term result. They want the organization to succeed, even if no one remembers their name. One of the most powerful examples in the book is Darwin Smith, former CEO of Kimberly-Clark. When Smith took over, the company was average. Paper mills, low margins, little excitement. Then Smith made a decision that shocked everyone. He sold the core paper mills that defined the company's identity. He reinvested in consumer products. People thought he was reckless. Some thought he was foolish. Years later, Kimberly-Clark beat companies like Procter & Gamble in market returns. Smith did not give dramatic speeches. He did not seek attention. He quietly made hard decisions and stood by them. This pattern repeats across the research. Level 5 leaders credit success to their teams. They blame themselves for failure. They look out the window when things go well. They look in the mirror when things go wrong. This is not fake humility. It is genuine, and it has a psychological effect on the organization. When leaders remove ego from the center, people feel safer. They speak more honestly. They take responsibility. They focus on work instead of politics. In contrast, good companies often had leaders with strong personalities, charismatic, vision-driven, highly visible. They produced short-term results, but when they left, performance declined. Why? Because the system depended on them. Level 5 leaders build organizations that thrive without them. That is a different kind of ambition. Another important insight in this chapter is how level 5 leaders think about success. They do not chase applause, they chase progress. They do not ask, "How do I look?" They ask, "What must be done?" This mindset allows them to make unpopular decisions, to endure criticism, to stay steady when results lag. Ego-driven leaders need validation. Level 5 leaders need outcomes. This difference shows up under pressure. When things go wrong, ego-driven leaders protect their image. They explain, they deflect, they justify. Level 5 leaders focus on fixing reality. They face facts without drama. They act without panic. This creates trust. People know the leader is not playing a game. They know decisions serve the mission, not the ego. There is also an important misconception Collins addresses. Level 5 leaders are not weak. They are not passive. Their humility does not reduce their resolve. It sharpens it. They can be relentless. They can be demanding. They can be uncompromising about standards. But they do not need to dominate others to feel strong. Their strength comes from clarity. One of the most interesting findings is how these leaders are developed. They are rarely hired from outside with fanfare. They are often promoted from within. They grow with the organization. They care deeply about its future. Good companies often seek dramatic external leaders to spark change. Great companies grow leaders quietly. This matters beyond business. Think about leadership in your own life. When you lead a project, is it about proving yourself or building something that lasts? When things succeed, do you take credit or do you strengthen the system so success continues?
Level 5 leadership is uncomfortable because it asks you to let go of recognition. It asks you to serve something bigger than your identity. But it is powerful because organizations led this way do not depend on heroes. They depend on principles. Collins makes a subtle but profound point here. Greatness is not driven by ego energy. It is driven by purpose energy. Ego burns fast. Purpose burns long. That is why level 5 leadership creates sustained excellence. Key takeaway. The highest level of leadership is not about being impressive. It is about being effective, quietly, consistently, and for the long term. In the next chapter, we move from leaders to teams. Why the right people matter more than the right plan. Chapter 3. First who, then what? Here is a question that changes how you think about success. What matters more, a brilliant plan or the right people? Most organizations start with vision, strategy, direction. Then they try to find people to execute it. The great companies in Jim Collins's research did the opposite. They focused on who first, then what. This idea sounds simple. It is not, because it requires discipline and patience and courage. Collins uses a metaphor that has become famous. Imagine a bus. Great leaders focused first on getting the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. Only then do they decide where to drive the bus. Good companies often do the reverse. They pick a direction, then they convince people to follow. When the environment changes, the plan breaks, the people struggle, and momentum dies. Great companies trust that the right people can adapt to any direction. Why is this so powerful? Because strategy changes, markets shift, technology evolves. People are the constant. When you have disciplined, motivated, and capable people, you gain flexibility, you gain speed, you gain resilience. This chapter challenges a common belief that you motivate people to get results. Great companies do not rely on motivation. They rely on selection. They don't ask, how do we motivate people to care? They ask, who already cares deeply? Motivation fades. Character remains. That is why hiring is destiny. Collins found that great companies were ruthless about people decisions, but not in a cruel way. They were clear. If someone did not fit, they did not tolerate the mismatch. They acted early. They acted respectfully. Good companies delayed these decisions. They hoped problems would fix themselves. They tolerated mediocrity for the sake of harmony. Great companies understood something important. The moment you tolerate the wrong person, standards drop. Not loudly, quietly. People notice. They adjust expectations. They stop pushing. Momentum weakens. Another powerful insight here is how great companies handle change. When the right people are in place, change feels less threatening. Why? Because people trust each other. They are committed to excellence, not comfort. They don't cling to titles or roles. So when direction shifts, they shift. Good companies often try to motivate people with incentives, bonuses, perks, pressure. Great companies assume motivation. They remove obstacles instead. This flips traditional management thinking. Instead of pushing people harder, They design environments where effort flows naturally. One of the most counterintuitive findings in this chapter involves discipline. Great companies did not rely on strict rules to control people. They relied on self-discipline. When you have the wrong people, you need rules. When you have the right people, rules feel unnecessary. This connects deeply with leadership. Level 5 leaders do not use charisma to inspire loyalty. They use clarity to attract the right people. People want to work in environments where standards are clear, where excellence is expected, where effort matters.
This chapter also reframes the idea of talent. It is not just about skills, it is about values. Great companies hired people who shared a deep commitment to quality, to learning, to responsibility. Skills can be taught, values cannot. That is why character beats resume. Think about how this applies beyond organizations. If you build a creative project, who you collaborate with matters more than your idea. If you build habits, your environment matters more than your willpower. If you build a life, your circle matters more than your goals. First who, then what. This principle also requires courage from leaders. It means making hard decisions before clarity exists. It means trusting people before knowing the exact path. Most avoid this because it feels risky, but the research shows the opposite. The biggest risk is committing to a direction with the wrong people. Great companies accept temporary ambiguity in exchange for long-term strength. Good companies seek immediate certainty and pay later. There is also a lesson here about firing. Great companies do not fire quickly, they hire carefully. When mistakes happen, they correct them early. Delay compounds pain. This chapter ends with a powerful implication. If you are struggling to find the right strategy, you may be asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, "What should we do?" ask, "Who should be with us?" Because when the right people are in place, answers emerge. Key takeaway: direction matters, but people matter more. In the next chapter, we face one of the hardest disciplines of all: looking at reality without losing hope. Chapter 4. Confront the brutal facts. Here is a question that separates strong organizations from fragile ones. Can you face reality without losing hope? Most people think optimism means ignoring bad news. Jim Collins shows the opposite. The great companies were relentlessly honest. They looked directly at problems. They did not soften them. They did not hide them. Yet they never lost faith. This balance is the heart of this chapter. Collins calls it the Stockdale paradox. It is named after Admiral Jim Stockdale, a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He survived years of captivity and torture. When asked how he survived, his answer was revealing. The optimists failed first. They kept saying, "We will be out by Christmas." When Christmas passed, they broke. Stockdale believed two things at the same time. He believed he would survive in the end, and he accepted the brutal reality of his current situation. No denial, no false hope, just clarity and faith together. Great companies operate the same way. They never lose belief that they will prevail, but they never lie to themselves about where they stand. Good companies struggle with this. They confuse positivity with denial. They downplay problems to protect morale. They avoid difficult conversations. This creates a dangerous gap between reality and perception. Over time, that gap destroys trust. In the great companies, truth flowed freely. People could speak up. Bad news traveled fast. Questions were encouraged. Not because leaders were soft, because they were secure. When leaders can handle truth, organizations grow stronger. When leaders fear truth, organizations rot quietly. Collins found several practices that helped great companies confront reality. First, they led with questions, not answers. Leaders did not pretend to know everything. They asked, they listened, they debated. Second, they created a climate where truth was safe. No punishment for bad news, no reward for silence. People knew that honesty mattered more than comfort. Third, they used red flag mechanisms, simple systems that made problems visible early. Customer complaints, missed targets, quality issues. These were not buried, they were studied. Good companies often explained problems away.
Great companies treated problems as data. Another important insight is emotional. Facing reality feels uncomfortable. It threatens identity. It challenges assumptions. That is why denial feels attractive. But denial is expensive. It delays action. It magnifies damage. It creates shock when reality finally hits.
Great companies pay the emotional cost early. Good companies pay the operational cost later. This principle applies directly to personal growth. If you avoid honest self-assessment, improvement stalls. If you rationalize habits, patterns repeat. If you protect your ego, you limit your potential. Truth hurts less than stagnation. There is also a subtle distinction Collins makes. Brutal facts are not pessimism, they are clarity. Pessimism says this will never work. Brutal facts say this is where we are. From that place, intelligent action becomes possible. Great companies did not obsess over blame. They obsessed over understanding. Why did this happen? What does it mean? What must change? These questions replace panic with progress. Another critical point. Faith does not come from ignoring reality. It comes from facing it and acting anyway. When people see leaders confronting truth calmly, confidence grows. Not artificial confidence, earned confidence. This chapter teaches a quiet form of courage, the courage to listen, the courage to admit uncertainty, the courage to say, this is not good enough. That courage builds resilience. Key takeaway, you must never confuse faith with denial. The path to greatness runs straight through reality. In the next chapter, we arrive at the core idea that ties everything together, how great companies simplify complexity and find their true focus. Chapter 5, the hedgehog concept. Here is a question that sounds simple but changes everything. What is the one thing you should focus on? Most people chase many goals. Most companies chase many opportunities. Great companies do something different. They simplify, not because they lack ambition, because they understand depth beats breadth. Jim Collins introduces a metaphor from an old Greek story. The fox knows many things. The hedgehog knows one big thing. The fox is clever. The hedgehog is clear. When danger comes, the fox tries many tricks. The hedgehog does one thing perfectly. It survives. Great companies think like hedgehogs. They do not try to be everything. They do not chase every opportunity. They commit to one core idea and align everything around it. This is not a slogan. It is a discipline. Collins calls this focus the hedgehog concept. It sits at the intersection of three circles. First circle, what can you be the best in the world at? Not what you want to be best at, not what you try hard at, what you can truly excel at. This requires brutal honesty. Many companies assume they can be great at what they already do. Great companies test that assumption. If you cannot be the best, you either change or refocus. Second circle, what drives your economic engine? In simple terms, what activity has the biggest impact on results? Not revenue alone, not size, the key driver. Profit per customer, cash per product, value per hour. Great companies understand this deeply. They make decisions through this lens. Third circle, what are you deeply passionate about? Not hype, not motivation posters, real commitment, the kind that sustains effort when progress feels slow. When all three circles overlap, clarity appears. This clarity guides decisions. It filters opportunities. It reduces noise. Good companies often have two circles, rarely all three. They might have passion and skill, but no economic clarity, or strong economics without deep commitment. Great companies insist on alignment. One of the most important lessons here is time. The hedgehog concept does not appear overnight. It emerges through reflection, through trial, through mistakes. Collins emphasizes this again and again. This is not a brainstorming exercise, it is a discovery process. Great companies tested ideas. They learned from failure. They refined focus. They asked hard questions for years. Good companies rushed this process. They adopted vague visions. They moved on too quickly. Clarity takes patience. Another subtle insight. The hedgehog concept is not a goal, it is an understanding. It does not say we will be great. It says this is what greatness looks like for us.
This distinction matters. Goals change, understanding compounds. Once a company finds its hedgehog concept, decisions become easier. Opportunities that do not fit are ignored, even if they look attractive. This is discipline. Great companies say no more often than yes. This applies directly to personal life. Most people struggle not because they lack talent, but because they lack focus. They divide energy across too many directions. They chase progress everywhere and get depth nowhere. When you find your own hedgehog concept, effort concentrates. Your learning accelerates. Your confidence grows. Your results compound. But this requires humility. You must admit what you are not great at. You must let go of paths that do not fit. That feels like loss, but it creates power. There is also a warning in this chapter. Being good at something does not mean it belongs in your hedgehog concept. If it does not drive results, if it does not sustain passion, if it does not allow excellence, it becomes a distraction. Great companies do not romanticize history. They evolve. They respect the past, but do not cling to it. This is why focus creates freedom. When you know what matters, energy stops leaking. Key takeaway. Greatness comes from deep focus, not wide ambition. Clarity is a competitive advantage. In the next chapter, we see what happens when focus meets discipline, how great companies turn understanding into consistent action. Chapter 6. A Culture of Discipline. Here is a question that reshapes how you think about control. What if you did not need to manage people closely at all? Most organizations rely on rules, policies, approvals, supervision. They assume people need control to perform. Great companies assume the opposite. They build a culture of discipline, not discipline imposed from the top, discipline chosen by individuals. This chapter connects everything so far. Level 5 leadership, right people, brutal facts, clear focus. When these are in place, discipline becomes natural. Collins makes an important distinction early. Discipline is not rigidity, it is consistency. Great companies are not chaotic, but they are not bureaucratic either. They give people freedom within a clear framework. That framework comes from the hedgehog concept. When people know what matters, they regulate themselves. Good companies use rules to control behavior. Great companies use purpose to guide behavior. This difference changes everything. In a disciplined culture, people do not need to be watched. They do not need constant motivation. They do not need pressure. They know the standards. They hold themselves accountable. Collins breaks this culture into 3 parts: disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action. Disciplined people come first. This connects back to chapter 3. When you have the right people, discipline is not forced, it is expected. Wrong people need rules. Right people need clarity. Great companies did not hire for obedience. They hired for responsibility. These people wanted to do excellent work. They took pride in results. Rules would have slowed them down. Disciplined thought comes next. This means thinking clearly within the hedgehog concept. No distractions, no shiny objects, no emotional decisions. Good companies chase opportunities that look exciting. Great companies ask one question: does this fit our core understanding? If not, they pass, even when the opportunity looks profitable. This restraint is rare, but it protects focus. Disciplined action is the final piece. This is where culture becomes visible. Great companies were fanatically consistent. They did the same right things again and again, even when nobody was watching, even when results were slow. No drama, no heroics, just steady execution. Good companies often rely on bursts of effort, late nights, emergency pushes, crisis management. Great companies avoid crises by acting early. They trust process more than panic. Another powerful idea in this chapter is the absence of bureaucracy. You might expect disciplined companies to be rule-heavy. The research showed the opposite. The best companies had fewer rules. Why? Because discipline came from people, not policies. When everyone understands the standards, formal control becomes unnecessary. This creates speed. Decisions happen faster. Execution improves. Ownership increases. There is also a psychological benefit. People feel trusted. Trust increases responsibility. Responsibility increases care. This creates a positive loop. Control creates compliance. Trust creates commitment. This chapter also addresses a common fear. If you give people freedom, will chaos follow? The answer depends on clarity. Freedom without focus creates confusion. Freedom with focus creates excellence.
Great companies were clear about what they would not do. That clarity created boundaries. Inside those boundaries, people moved fast. Outside them, nothing happened. This is the essence of disciplined freedom. Think about how this applies personally. If your goals are vague, discipline feels exhausting. If your priorities are clear, discipline feels natural. You stop forcing yourself. You start aligning yourself. You do not need more willpower. You need better structure. A culture of discipline is not about being strict. It is about being consistent. It is about doing the boring, right things longer than others are willing to. Key takeaway: discipline works best when it comes from within. Clarity creates freedom. Chapter 7: Technology Accelerators. Here is a question worth asking in the age of constant innovation. Does technology create greatness, or does it only amplify what already exists? Many companies believe technology is a solution, a shortcut, a savior. Jim Collins found something different. Technology does not make companies great. It makes great companies greater, and it makes confused companies collapse faster. This chapter is a warning against hype. The good to great companies were not early adopters for the sake of image. They were thoughtful adopters. They didn't chase trends. They chose tools that fit their hedgehog concept. This distinction is critical. Good companies often asked, "What is the latest technology?" Great companies asked, "Does this strengthen what we already do best?" If the answer was no, they waited, sometimes for years. This patience protected focus. Collins gives several examples. Some great companies adopted technology late, yet they outperformed competitors who rushed in. Why? Because they integrated technology with purpose. Technology became an accelerator, not a distraction. Another important insight: great companies did not use technology to motivate change. They used it to support clarity. If a company lacked discipline, technology added complexity. If a company lacked focus, technology created noise. This is a lesson that extends far beyond business. New tools do not fix unclear thinking, they expose it. Many organizations adopt tools hoping for transformation. What they get is chaos because the foundation is missing. Great companies built foundations first: leadership, people, focus, discipline. Only then did technology amplify results. Collins also highlights timing. Being first does not matter. Being right matters. Good companies rushed to be seen as innovative. Great companies waited until they understood the implications. This saved resources. It reduced mistakes. It increased confidence. Technology was never the strategy. It was the servant. This chapter also challenges a modern myth that progress requires constant change. Great companies were selective. They changed when change aligned with purpose. They stayed steady when it did not. Consistency beat novelty. Think about how this applies to personal productivity. New apps do not create focus. New systems do not create discipline. Clarity does. Tools only help when direction is clear. Another subtle point: great companies did not fear technology. They respected it. They invested deeply when the fit was right. They trained people. They committed fully. Half adoption creates friction. Full alignment creates momentum. This chapter reminds us that tools are neutral. They reflect the quality of thinking behind them. If thinking is sharp, tools sharpen results. If thinking is scattered, tools scatter effort. Key takeaway:
Technology is a multiplier, not a miracle. Use it to accelerate clarity, not to replace it. In the next chapter, we see how all these ideas compound over time, why greatness feels slow and then suddenly obvious.
Chapter 8: The Flywheel and the Doom Loop. Here is a question that explains why most change efforts fail. Why does progress feel invisible for so long and then suddenly obvious? Greatness rarely arrives with drama. It arrives with momentum. Jim Collins introduces one of the most important ideas in the book, the flywheel. Imagine a massive metal wheel, heavy, hard to move. At first, pushing it feels pointless. You push, nothing happens. You push again, still nothing. But you keep pushing, same direction, same effort. Slowly, the wheel starts to move, barely noticeable. Then it turns faster and faster. Eventually, momentum takes over. That is how great companies grow, not through breakthroughs, through build-up. This idea challenges the way we think about success. We look for turning points, big moments, announcements. Collins found none. No single decision, no dramatic transformation, just consistent action aligned with focus. Good companies misunderstood this. They wanted quick results. They changed direction often. They launched programs. They chased new strategies. When results did not appear fast, they panicked. This created what Collins calls the doom loop. New leader, new vision, new initiative, short burst of energy, no sustained results. Disappointment follows. Blame spreads. Another change begins. Motion without momentum. Great companies avoided this trap. They committed to the flywheel. They accepted slow progress early. They resisted the urge to explain. They kept pushing. One insight here is patience. Great leaders understood the time delay between effort and outcome. They did not expect applause. They expected resistance. This allowed them to stay calm when results lagged. Good companies interpreted slow results as failure. Great companies interpreted them as part of the process. Another key insight is consistency. The flywheel only works if you push in the same direction. Random effort cancels itself. This is why focus from the hedgehog concept matters so much. Every action reinforced the same idea. Every decision added energy to the same wheel. Over time, small wins accumulated. Employee morale improved. Customer trust grew. Financial results followed. None of this felt dramatic. That is why outsiders often misread success. They see the results and assume a miracle. Insiders know better. They remember the years of quiet work. This chapter also explains why motivation fades. People want quick feedback. When effort feels invisible, doubt grows. Great companies protected belief by measuring progress correctly. They tracked leading indicators, process quality, customer satisfaction, not just outcomes. This kept faith alive during slow phases. There is also a personal lesson here. Most people quit too early. They change habits before momentum forms. They abandon projects before compounding begins. They mistake slow growth for wrong direction. The flywheel teaches patience. Effort compounds only when direction stays constant. Another important distinction: the flywheel is not about working harder, it is about working aligned. Pushing harder in the wrong direction exhausts you. Pushing steadily in the right direction builds power. Great companies understood this deeply. They did not burn people out. They paced effort. They trusted process over excitement. This chapter quietly dismantles the myth of overnight success. There is no moment when everything changes. There is only the moment when accumulated effort becomes visible. Key takeaway: greatness is not an event. It is momentum earned through consistency. In the next chapter, we step back and look at legacy. What allows greatness to endure beyond success itself? Chapter 9: From Good to Great to Built to Last. Here is a deeper question. What happens after success? Many companies become great and then fade. They win for a while, then they drift. Jim Collins wanted to know why. This chapter connects good to great with a larger idea: endurance. Greatness that lasts requires more than performance. It requires purpose.
The companies that sustained excellence over decades shared something deeper than strategy. They had a core ideology, not a slogan, not a marketing line, a set of values and beliefs that did not change. Markets shifted, products evolved, leadership changed, the core stayed. These companies understood a crucial distinction. What you do can change. Why you do it should not. Good companies often define themselves by products. Great companies define themselves by principles. This difference protects them over time. When conditions change, product-based identity collapses. Principle-based identity adapts. Collins shows that the best companies preserved their core while stimulating progress. Two forces, stability and change. Most organizations choose one. Great ones balance both. They hold values steady. They challenge everything else. This prevents stagnation. Another important insight: enduring companies think in generations, not quarters. They make decisions that outlive current leaders. They build systems, not dependence. This connects back to level 5 leadership. Great leaders do not build monuments to themselves. They build institutions. They ask different questions. What will still matter in 20 years? What must never be compromised? What can be reinvented? This long-term thinking creates resilience. Short-term wins feel exciting. Long-term relevance creates impact. Collins also highlights a danger. Success breeds arrogance. When companies win for too long, they start believing their own myths. They confuse results with superiority. Great companies guard against this. They stay curious. They stay humble. They keep learning. They remember that greatness is rented, not owned. Rent is due every day. This idea applies directly to personal growth. Skills decay if not renewed. Habits weaken if not reinforced. Character erodes if not protected. Enduring excellence requires maintenance. Not maintenance of comfort, maintenance of standards. Another powerful theme here is meaning. The most enduring companies cared about more than profit. Profit mattered, but it was not the purpose. Purpose created alignment. Alignment created energy. When people feel part of something meaningful, effort deepens. This is not idealism. It is practical. Meaning sustains effort when incentives fade. This chapter closes the loop. Good to great is not about winning faster. It is about building something that deserves to win longer. Key takeaway: lasting greatness comes from preserving core values while continually improving everything else. If you're ready, say continue. I will move into the conclusion and bring the entire journey together.
Greatness does not announce itself early. It reveals itself late. That is why so many people quit too soon. They change direction when momentum has not yet formed. They abandon standards when results lag. They look for breakthroughs instead of buildup. Good to great offers a calmer path. A path where you stop chasing miracles and start building systems. A path where you stop asking for motivation and start designing environments. A path where you stop reacting to noise and start listening to reality. What makes this book powerful is how widely it applies. You may not run a company, but you run habits. You may not lead teams, but you lead choices. You may not manage strategy, but you manage attention. The same principles apply. If your standards are low, comfort will trap you. If your ego leads, growth will stall. If your focus is vague, effort will leak. If your discipline depends on mood, progress will collapse. Greatness in life looks similar to greatness in business. It is quiet. It is patient. It is principled. So what can you actually take from this and use? Here are a few practical principles to carry forward. First, raise your standards when things are going well. Do not wait for crisis to improve. Comfort is the most dangerous signal. Second, choose humility over image. Ask what works, not what impresses. Build systems that succeed without you. Third, put people and environments first. Your outcomes are shaped by who surrounds you. Choose carefully. Design deliberately.
Fourth, face reality early. Truth is not the enemy of hope. It is the foundation of it. And fifth, commit to the flywheel. Pick a direction that fits who you are, then push again and again without drama. Progress will feel slow until it does not. One day, results will appear obvious to others. They will ask what changed. You will know the answer. Nothing sudden, nothing magical, just years of disciplined clarity. Good to great ends without fireworks. And that is the point. Greatness does not need noise. It needs integrity. So here is a final question to sit with. What flywheel are you pushing right now? And are you willing to keep pushing when no one is watching? That answer will decide far more than talent ever could.